question that you probably have is, how in the world are you going to identify any of your metamorphic rocks? So what we can do to look at metamorphic rocks, if you just pick something up, you have to figure out two things. The first thing is, what is the texture that you're looking at? Okay, so we talk about metamorphic rocks as being either foliated or non-foliated. If it's foliated, that means we have some sort of layering inside of the rock that we can see, actual layers, or else we see that the mineral grains are all lying one on top of the other, so they're all oriented in the same direction. Or we sometimes see very distinct bands that alter between light and dark colored minerals. So just think layering, mineral alignment, and banding. Okay. If it doesn't have layering or any of that alignment, we're just going to call it non-foliated. Okay, and when we look at these, all of the mineral crystals are going to be about the same size, roughly the same shape, and they're going to be very interlocking. So same size, shape, we would call it equidimensional. They all have about the same size. If you wanted to actually look at it under a hand lens, the grains are roughly going to be all the same size and they're interlocking. As opposed to with foliated, you probably would notice that some of the minerals are stacked up and they're creating some sort of layer. Okay. The second thing we're going to look at are the minerals. Okay, I'm going to go over some tips for identifying minerals and metamorphic rocks. When we're doing our classifications, if it is fine grain, okay, that means all of the minerals are going to be less than 1 millimeter in diameter. That means they're going to be too small to see, so you're not going to have to identify the minerals. You can kind of look at color if you want to list it as something to note, but we're not going to worry so much as identifying the minerals. If it's coarse grained, I'm going to try to write it on here, but we might be below the board. It's going to be greater than 1 millimeter. So when you look at these grains, you have to look very carefully, look for the boundaries. But this would be something that is as big as maybe the lead on a piece of pencil. Kind of 1 millimeter, 2 millimeter, you can identify with your eyes, but the trick is how to actually see the different minerals. What are you looking for? So I'm going to write a list with some tips. We're going to start by looking at light colored minerals, and then looking at darker colored minerals. The first light-colored mineral that you might encounter is calcite. Okay, when you're looking at calcite under a hand lens, it's going to be white to clear. It can be opaque to a little bit translucent. It's very soft, so it has a hardness of 3. Just think back to your mineral lab. Hardness of 3, so you can scratch it with a piece of glass. Okay. Additionally, it would fizz with acid, is another thing to look at. The second thing that you can look at in minerals would be quartz. Quartz and calcite tend to look very similar. They're both, white to gray to clear. They can be opaque or translucent. Quartz is going to look glassy. And just kind of remember, glassy. Quartz has a hardness of 7. A glass plate has a hardness of 5.5. So if you have something made out of quartz, and you do a scratch test on a plate of glass, it will leave a mark. Okay, it's going to scratch that glass. Additionally, it will not fizz or react with acid. If you have mineral grains that are big enough, you might notice conchoidal fracturing, or in some cases, you might notice that quartz tends to look sandblasted or sugary in its texture. I'm going to list both the feldspars together. They do become a little bit harder to identify in rock, so at an introductory level, we're just going to combine them together. You're going to be looking for something that's opaque, white, gray, possibly pink. When you look at it, light is not going to pass through it in the same way that it is calcite or quartz. Okay? They're going to be very dense looking. They're not going to be as shiny. They tend to be pretty large. So if it just kind of looks earthy or maybe a little bit pearly and it's white or pink or gray and opaque, feldspars are a good thing to guess. Okay, they're also going to tend to be a little bit larger than a lot of the quartz that you're going to see. Okay, Muscovite is one of the mica series. When we look at Muscovite, it is going to be layered. It's flaky, we can break it apart. And it's going to be a light, either clear to maybe a light wine color. Okay, it's often seen with biotite. This looks going to look very similar, so you might see one or the other. Biotite is going to be darker, more browns to blacks, also very flaky. Because it breaks off on that one plane of cleavage, the flat surfaces will be very shiny, so kind of look for something to reflect light, turn it on the edge, and then look for the layers within that mica crystal. The next mineral that we're going to look at is hornblende. And when we look at hornblende, we're going to be looking for something that's black. And when you look at it under a hand lens and you turn it around underneath the light, you're going to see something that looks splintery. Okay. And a comparison of that would be looking at augite. Okay, your pyroxene. It's also going to be black, but when you turn it under the light, because it has the two planes of cleavage that meet at 90 degrees, this is going to look blocky under your hand lens. Okay. And the last mineral I'm going to list, which you might encounter, is going to be garnet. Garnet is going to be pretty common when we look at some of our metamorphic rocks. We see them a lot in schists. Garnets can be anything from a beautiful bright red to a little bit more of a brown. And they tend to make nice porphyroblasts. They're going to be rounded. I think they look kind of like little soccer balls. You can see the actual mineral crystal surfaces on the top. And they do make nice kind of soccer ball shapes when you're looking at them. So that would be a list of minerals to look for. To help you out, the top 4 are going to be light in color. Okay, the bottom 4 are going to be darker in